Okay, so our next example is going to be on writing equations. Okay, I know that this one is a quadratic function because of the U shape. Even though it's facing down, still makes it quadratic, so I know I'm going to have 2 somewhere in my equation as the exponent. Okay, easiest form to write is vertex form. So I'm going to write that up here. Okay, and so now what I would do is basically fill in my equation from left to right after the equal sign. Okay, and I'm going to show you 2 different approaches that you can use when writing these equations. Okay, so I'm going to erase this. So first way is to notice where your vertex started and where it finished. Okay, so it started here. I obviously flipped it at some point, right? Because now it's facing down over here in red. So I know that that A value should be negative because a negative sign is what flips it. Okay, in my class, we haven't focused on how to find the A value yet. We're going to do that as a next example. Okay, so negative sign flipped it down. Parentheses, remember, makes it move left or right. I know based off of my final landing spot of that red parabola that my graph had to shift to the right 2 times. So remember, inside parentheses, when I move to the right, it should be -2. There's that quadratic squared. And then it moved down 3 times. So -3. So if I were to have used my vertex, right, locate my vertex, get the coordinates of my vertex, so 2, -3. Remember, this is my h, this is my k. We use opposite of the h value when we're plugging it into our equation. So opposite of 2 was that -2 that I got. That means that it went right 2. And then my -3 just became my -3 right here because it went down 3 times. Okay, so now we're going to work on how to find what my A value is. Okay, so everything else is correct, it's right, it's in place. So now what we're going to have to do to figure out what that A should be is we need to find an X and a Y on my curve. Okay, not my original curve, not my X squared, but this one down here in red. Okay, where it was transformed to. So I'm just going to pick a random point, a good point, right? I want a good point. So I'm going to say 1, -5. 1, -5. Then I'm going to label that as my X and my Y, and that is what I'm going to use to help me solve for A. Okay, so instead of Y over here, I'm going to plug in that -5. Minus A, my X, should have been plugged in, I'm sorry. Instead of X, I should have written that 1 -2 squared minus 3. Okay, and actually I'm going to backtrack a little bit. Okay, we still need to find a point on the curve. Okay, it needs to be a good point that I'm able to find coordinates for. But I'm going to backtrack to this part right here where I put that -A. I know that my final A value is going to have to be negative, but I don't want to put the negative sign yet until after we solve for it, okay? If that makes sense. So I know that my A has to be negative, okay? But I don't want to include that negative sign yet, okay? Because I need to solve for it first. Hopefully when we get to the bottom, when I'm done, I'm going to say A equals, and it's going to be a negative number, okay? But bear with me. Let's simplify this and solve for A and see if it turns out to be a negative value. And then we're going to check if it's less than 1 or bigger than 1 to see what happened to my curve, okay? So let's simplify. Inside parentheses, I am going to get a negative 1. Okay, so I'm going to say negative 5 is equal to A negative 1 squared minus 3. Okay, simplify further. I'm going to get A negative 1 times a negative 1 becomes a positive 1 minus 3. So I'm going to add this 3 to both sides. So I'm going to say negative 2 is equal to A times 1 just becomes A. And so there is my A value that I'm going to use when I'm writing my final equation, right? Because the one we got up here was right, but you see how we were still missing that A value. We knew it had to be negative because it flipped down. Well, now we know what it is right here. Okay, so I'm going to move it up a little bit. Hopefully I don't mess up too much. And we're going to write the final equation for that parabola using my A value now. So final equation is y equals, I knew it had to be negative, now I know what the actual A value is. Negative 2. Everything I had already there is still correct. And there is my final answer, with the A value included. Okay, so after we plugged in for that X and Y, we solved for A. Remember, I don't want to include that negative sign, okay? I want to use just the regular vertex form to plug in, okay? Whoops. So if I just want to check myself, negative sign made my original flip down, right? Okay. This minus 2 in parentheses should have made it go to the right 2 times, which it did. And then this minus 3 should have made it go down 3 times for my vertex to finish in that spot. So now if I look at what my A value is, 2, it does look like my curve got taller and skinnier compared to my original. Okay, and my original is just a sketch, so this equation does work.